What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rattle Cruise podcast, where we dig deep to reach high, and of course, it's always progress through action. I am your co-host, Payron Baxter.
I'm your co-host, Ram Sandoval. What's up, everyone? How y'all doing tonight?
Hope you are doing well. Before we get going, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Rattle Cruise podcast. This show only continues on with your support, whether that be through sharing it, liking it, talking to it about it with a friend. And we implore you to at least talk to at least 10 to 1,500 people about this podcast, because that's how we grow. We want to make sure we're getting information right to your eardrums and right to your brain. But yeah, Rom, before we get going here, this music here sounds very much like some sort of loading screen for like a PlayStation 1, stealth game. Metal Gear Soft, if you will.
It's the Halloween mix. So
Oh, there you go. Okay, yes, very
yeah,
thriller-esque.
yeah. Wait till we get somebody that does a little jingle for us, the intro jingle.
You know, I know people may think that that we can make the beats, but we can't make the beats. We need folks out there to make the beats for us. But how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a good weekend. We had a week with the girls. The wife was in New Orleans.
Oh,
Got back today, and she was there for a conference. Yesterday I got a chance to watch the Versus
yeah.
Challenge.
As did many of us. Right,
No Limit versus Cash Money.
right.
I grew up with the No Limit. Let's see what's this right here.
Mm-hmm.
That was my jam. Master
Mm-hmm.
P. I enjoyed
Personnel.
watching that. They were in Vegas, but I feel like New Orleans was probably popping off. If I was in New Orleans, I would have been out somewhere.
You them out there with like
But I
a
was at
Fuji
home.
jersey on.
Yeah, but I was at home, and I had to, drink a little bit of whiskey and dance by myself, a little concert by myself. But
No
I was
problem with that.
texting
So
my
what?
friends and whatnot, and it was pretty fun.
We were all vibing out together at that moment. I think as a collective society, I was, texting in multiple group chats, multiple groups, multiple feedback, multiple, oh, can you see that? You see this, you see that. So yeah, that's normal. That was normal. I thought it was a very good show. I will say, my brothers done aged. The only ones who haven't aged, and I think you nailed it on the head, was Mia X.
Yeah,
And I mean, Mia X and Juvie carried it. I posted that on Facebook earlier. Like, if it wasn't for those two, it would have been kind of a snoozer. But those two came with the fury, the lyricism, and showed that why they were so hot and why we knew their names in the '90s and early 2000s.
yeah. So No Limit won by like this much, maybe a tie.
I say
Lil
Cash
Wayne did
Money.
not come out. Lil Wayne
He
didn't
did
come
not.
out.
He did not.
And then Snoop Dogg came out like, I got a
He
little
did.
disdain for Snoop Dogg in my heart right now. And so when he was
Absolutely.
talking and he went a cappella, I was like, as he's talking, and he's like, who are you talking about? Because I don't know if
Right.
you're really down. I don't know if
For
you're
my
down.
niggas. Right. Right.
So
And
yeah,
then
but it was
baby,
it was
and then baby had like a mental breakdown over Le Turk. Dude, what was that about? You know what that's about?
not. I don't know. I don't know all the drama. Baby's always got drama with somebody, but you better put some respect on his name, right?
True that. True that. Anywho,
So anywho,
and we have an exciting episode today.
yes, we
You
have a
want to tell the
guest
folks why?
today. Yeah, we have a guest today. It's been a little while since we had a guest.
Mm-hmm.
But we got my friend, Reynolds Broker. He is we worked together for many years in Chicago. I'm trying to figure out how to get him on the screen here.
Okay. Here we
Um,
go. Here we go.
let's see if
It
I
Good
wouldn't
can.
be
here.
it wouldn't be the show if we didn't have technical difficulties.
I got to get used to this whole new. I took them off and now I don't know how to unhide them. So let's see. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Ooh, Reynolds.
But
There.
he is a South Carolina native. But I'll let him go ahead and kind of introduce himself, and we'll talk a little bit about why he's here. I mean, we had really good conversations, but go ahead, Reynolds.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to say this. Long-time listener, first-time guest. Thanks for having me. Um, this is actually the the kind of video platform is giving me flashbacks to my interviews with Rom. I want to say 9 years ago. But I guess the best way to introduce myself is relative to Rom and the co-host, and getting to how this has all come together. But yeah, I interviewed with Rom 10 years ago, sight unseen for a tech company. I came out of international business school, was going to do the whole finance corporate, this is what you should do in life, follow the breadcrumbs to the American dream. And Rom and co, especially Rom, took a chance on me because I'm not exactly
conventional
on the outside, Joe, but up here there's a little something else going on. But we went from being a boss to a friend to somewhat of a mentor, and we seemed to cross paths at formative times in our respective lives. So, over the last 10 years, it's been like, at some point in the career, we just keep running into each other when something important is going on in our lives. Mine recently is, stepping out and wanting to be an entrepreneur, and also Rom moving down south into God's country.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, and again, that's how our relationship started off. Is I've lived a lot of places, but I've never been, I don't know how to say it, welcomed. And Rom took it upon himself, either out of curiosity or pity. I'm not really sure which one. Maybe he can answer that today. But he showed me around Chicago and made sure I didn't get hurt. 1, 2, I ended up having a good time, and I have a wonderful respect for the city and its people. And and when he said he was moving down south, I was like, come to Greenville. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, for the record. And Charlotte's a stone's throw away. And kind of like he gave me the survival guide for Chicago, I felt like I should give him the survival guide for down here. So either if you believe in divine providence or serendipity, our paths have crossed again. He showed me all his podcasts, and it was some cool shit, and talking about things that either people are too afraid to talk about, or I don't want to say too not highbrow, but it's cool to see regular. And I'm not saying y'all are regular in any sense of the word.
We're extraordinary. No, I'm joking.
Extraordinary. But I guess speaking in a language that everyone understands, and not from an ivory tower, I guess is the best way I could articulate it. But I know that's a little long in the tooth, but
thank you for that intro. And I think I remember hanging out several nights in Chicago, and you would just be talking about, we ended up talking about politics and race and just comfortable just politicking and talking, drinking, late at night and that type of thing. So I gotta go to the bar nowadays, and I end up in a conversation about religion and politics
all the time.
So I mean, like nowadays that's like normal. Back then I was like, if I wasn't at the club or partying, I'd be back at the crib.
So 10 years ago, y'all was some party harders 10 years ago. I mean, because Ron, that's putting you right at 39. I don't know how old Reynolds is, but like you guys sound like
that was when I was like retiring the jersey around.
Oh wow!
I was
city on your back.
Up where he left off. He was handing the jersey off to me.
There you go.
But I will say, Ram and I's conversations quickly. down here, I it's probably the same everywhere. But the three things you typically don't talk about first thing, especially with your bosses: race, religion, finances. The usual kind of faux pas. But we always ended up. A lot of our conversations ended up gravitating that way, and I chalk it up to just like radical candor and curiosity. And I think that's where it starts, is curiosity and not getting, I don't know.
Offended.
Yeah, offended,
or
offended,
be comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
There you
Too,
go.
Yeah,
There you go. There
that's
you go.
probably the most concise way of putting it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And knowing that, well, at least giving, even though for my power dynamic, he had more power than me, I knew that I wouldn't be penalized for expressing the truth. I'd be penalized for not expressing the real truth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I always appreciated that. Yeah, authenticity.
Yeah, and trust, building trust, right? Like, I've had teams, and I've considered trust, and being vulnerable, is a positive with the people you work closely with. But yeah, so when we had a conversation a couple weeks ago, when we started talking about what we would potentially talk about when you came onto the pod.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we were talking about survival list and what that meant, and one thing that came up when we were talking, I said, well, survival to you is more like a bug out bag, ready to be in the woods, got your survival gear, you got your gun, your knife, you're ready to start a fire, whatever you need to do to survive. And then, for myself and what I would be more used to, or even, Black folks would be more like, survival in the house, the more like a bug in bag, right? Like, how do you survive off of your resources, your community? And you could also say like an urban versus a rural survival, right? In an urban area, you're around your community, you're really close to your community. You have a lot of people that help take care of each other. You have, whether it be daycare, food, having, resources nearby. In a rural area, it's like, well, one man for himself. You might have neighbors, down the road. At least that's kind of the way that I think about it. But just kind of on the surface, thinking about like the word survival, meaning
Right.
two very different meanings to, different parts of America.
Yeah. And I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but that the question almost came about just like how you doing living around here, like not in like, because I know what it feels like to move to a place that I'm not familiar with, right? It's kind of been a hallmark of my life. Every like 2 to 4 years I'll move. And Ram got the question on, well, it's kind of a loaded question, right? How are you surviving? Whether that be from like day-to-day life, but in the where we came together and like our definitions were so different, it was just really fascinating. So like what he's if we want to talk about like how we approach things, I'm happy to talk about that, Ram. But yeah, from a bug out, when you say how do you survive, I think there's a couple things that you take into account. What's your family situation? You got to think about that, your community, and the resources you have at hand. But our approaches were like completely different, which was just fun to kind of parcel out. And happy to talk about like what.
Yeah. I think we have today, and I've always considered myself privileged in a lot of ways, and I think it's obviously a spectrum of like, privilege means different things to different people, right? Where there's white privilege, whether it's privilege of like, not having to worry about where your next meal is coming from. So myself, I had a single mother and I had a grandmother who I never felt like I didn't have anything I needed. even if they, made ends meet, or, money wasn't plentiful, right? But I know that there's other people who were not in fortunate situations. I mean, I lived in Hyde Park, Chicago, which is a pretty nice neighborhood in Chicago in the middle of the South Side. And I live next to Inglewood, which is drastically different, right? And it's different if you go up north of Chicago. And, I think it's funny because I'm like, in Chicago, in a lot of ways, it's more segregated than here in Union County, North Carolina.
I would venture
anywhere,
to say that it is,
but you wouldn't. Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize here is like it is more diverse here, especially when it comes to like living in Chicago. I mean, it's like you have your section, you have your Latinos, you have your Black, you have your white, like you have your Indian. Like it's very segregated in that way. And yes, come together downtown and meet in different places, but everyone goes home. And I'm here, and I'm like, I'll go to certain places, and I just can't tell who there's a lot of places there's not like predominantly anything, especially when I'm out with the kids. Like I can't tell. And I don't think like the way that politicians here, especially like, Mayor Robert Burns and Monroe, you would think that like this is the last stand of, having these white areas, like white only areas. Like you would think there's a white water fountain and a black water fountain, the way that some of the people talk about things down here. And I don't think they realize that you guys are actually more integrated and diverse here in this, at least in this part of the South. Cause I don't consider this, like, in my personal opinion, I'm not like the deep South, right?
Well, I think with that, historically, I'm always I'm the historian on the show, if you will, but historically, the largest concentration of Black people is in the Southeast still. The same place where chattel slavery, was the main part. A lot of us weren't allowed to leave. A lot of us did the Great Migration to the North. My grandmother did that from Alabama. I did that, so that's where my family's from, is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But the most of us still live in the Southeast, right? That's what I make sure my direction, my compass is right. The Southeast. So that makes a lot of sense, right? And then and then we look at the power structures. You guys said earlier, like how yes, within a work framework, there is a power structure of a boss employee, but then the exact minute you leave those four walls of that office or those four walls of that screen, the power dynamic immediately shifts, right? How the world sees you, how the structures of government see you, how the structures of institutions see you. And that's where we need, the kind of the mode of the show about allyship and what that looks like in places where we aren't at, the places where there is the power of death or jailing or surveillance, and being able to have a friend or someone that we can consider an ally in spaces that are able to say, look, man, it's not just Rom, because I know Rom represents people like Rom. I know Rom represents people that are not these, dregs of society, or they're not people who are just trying to rape, steal, and kill everybody around them. And that's where we try, as JFK said, it's kind of hard to hate up close. When you meet people, it's kind of hard to be like, I hate, there you go. I love it. It's really hard to hate up close, right? And we want to maybe emphasize that, because a lot of people, I think, the stats of America is that 91% of white people, or people that believe themselves to be white, they self-segregate, right? They live in white towns, they live in white communities, they put their kids in white schools, they go to white churches, they go. So like when you are actively trying to get to know people outside of that breaks that, right? That breaks that code of silence. And that's how we get to know each other on a more human level. And it is in those who have more power should be able to reach into those kind of areas of power and be able to dismantle that, to make it more equal, to make it more accessible, because that's what all this is about right now. America's having this kind of Nazi hysteria due to lack of resources, due to the the gap of wealth, right? So we have to make sure, like, all of us who aren't the 1%, we got to come together to understand all that, to meet each other in the middle.
So I totally believe that, I don't represent the white community, but in this conversation, I do. I totally believe that segregation is definitely part of ingrained into society to some degree. Is that true for the Black and Latino community as well? Or, I mean, is it a self-segregation or is it?
So we talk about self-segregation again. We're
Or
going
is
back
it-
to systemic. The reason why, like, because who gets to draw maps of where people can live? Who gets to say who schools get educated? Who gets to say who gets to be represented in government? Who has the pen, right?
Okay.
All of those things create those things, right? This is why the 1% or wealthy people, whether it be in the 1800s and during the planter class, you know, there was poor white people too, but what they were able to get was, hey, you're a white person. You are not the enslaved. Therefore, if you sit on that horse with that shotgun, we will make sure that, you know, you're taken care of to a very small modicum degree. And that's what we have to kind of wash away now.
Right. I'm picking up what you're putting down. And I completely agree that this is the type of conversation that needs to happen at the local level. And I didn't make this part of my intro because I didn't want to come in with, but in a former life, I used to be a lobbyist, and don't think what was it? Some movie, the smoking lobbyist. I forget.
I haven't seen that one. No.
Thank you for smoking. Thank you for smoking.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yes.
what,
I have seen
most
it.
people
About
think
Philip Morris?
about. Yeah, that's what most
crazy.
people think for lobbyists. There are degrees of truth to it.
Okay.
For those that aren't familiar, it's this high-powered lobbyist that just makes the world move with a call. Well, I can tell you that it's at the local level. You know, and it's a little. It hurts me to talk to some of my friends. I'm 30, just turned 34, and they feel disenfranchised, and very well. There's a system out there that is very much against them in that there are people that draw borders and all this stuff, but there are ways to influence, and there's so much power in local organization, right? There's a lot of money in that. We'll stay away from that at the moment. But when it comes to allocating money for your schools, for whatever, you know, I think folks watch like large media outlets, and it just seems too big, you know, too big to move. And really, it's not that crazy. You go to a town council meeting, and I've seen Ron on, you know, hitting that up, rocking some meetings, which I love to see. I've gone to a couple, and that is really where you can institute change today, tomorrow, is at the local level, and it's not too big. Too big to move is what I mean. You can make big changes at the local level, and that's what governs us day to day. And I think if there's like a takeaway from this, it's like we need to come together locally in order to take it national. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. We talk about that quite a bit because, and especially, and I think one of the things that this podcast does is Peyron was the former Union County Democratic chair, right? And how we met is like he was speaking truth to power about, this was after the election, but he was in a room full of white folks, white Democrats, and he was explaining how, you know, white supremacy and these things that I was used to hearing, or just kind of like, and I was like, yeah, right on. And a lot of people were like hearing like for the first time, and it was like shocking. But I think, you know,
white Democrats.
Yes.
Yeah. How? What?
What? But, you know, and that's, I mean,
Exactly.
this county is a majority white. And so, like, you know, having conversations like this and having conversations and challenging what people are used to and challenging our preconceived notions of whatever we've grown up with. I mean, these are also older Democrats. So, like, this is a lifetime that we have to say, like, okay, it's not, we can't just skirt the issue of like race. We have to actually confront it head on when this is what they're using to distract America, so we can actually have that top versus bottom conversation, but we can't just skip it all together, right? And so, like, and part of that is building stronger allies in the community, and like getting that support. To your point, whether it's school board meetings, city council meetings, shaping what the narrative is in the newspaper, having those people, having multiple people write to the editor, write to the newspaper, write to call into the stations. And I'm also running for mayor of Stallings, right? Because I'm gonna have a write-in campaign. Like, so I mean, look, I'm gonna have a write-in campaign for the final 2 weeks here.
Write it in,
right?
Stallings,
So, but and I don't think I'll win. If I win, look, I'm up.
Wait, are you really running for mayor?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the write-in. I'm gonna have hopefully about 100.
He's gonna tell
at least 100
to write.
At least I have 100. But
right.
to my point, maybe I will. This was a yesterday decision, but like to that point, right? Like you can build this name rec. Like I moved here a year and a half ago, and people are like, "We'll run for mayor of Monroe." I'm like, I don't live in Monroe, right? People are. So my point is it's not as again, this is it's kind of sometimes
it is daunting,
but it's not this like thing that like no one can touch unless you're like part of this political apparatus. I was never into I was aware of politics and what was going on around me, but I was never like a lobbyist like you. I wasn't the Union County Democratic chair before, Payron was doing that. He also, I don't think you were that deep into politics either, Payron, but all of a sudden, you were there, and there's name recognition and those things. So I think more people, we always say people have to get involved, and I think as people get involved, especially at the local level, a lot of this culture war distraction is bullshit, right? But when we start talking about the things that matter, whether it's the local economy, again, access to healthcare, these things are disappearing at the national level. The federal government cut education budget by 5 to 10% in every single public school system. And then just last week, the teachers had a call out in Union County, which has a Republican school board, has a Republican board of commissioners, and a Republican-controlled General Assembly, and all of a sudden there's no money. They couldn't complete what they promised of $2,000 stipend for the teachers, and here they are infighting. So you have to ask those questions, right? But they're using the distraction of like, the bathroom bill in North Carolina. You don't want some a transgender person walking into the wrong restroom. Like all of these distractions and the anti-wokeism. These wokies are taking over our town, and we're not going to allow it. That's the type of rhetoric that people are up against, right? So,
and the thing is, and that eats up a lot of the time of the meeting, right? So, like, a meeting could be, scheduled for an hour and a half, and if you have, 8 already kind of baked in people who are going to come up there and say some bullshit for 3 minutes apiece, now you're 45 minutes or whatever, or 30 minutes, and people are just up there, oh, blah, blah. And then if you wanted to say something that's of value, or to push back, or to have some sort of objection, your time's gone, right? And then
classic misdirection.
Right. And then you're gone to the next, and then all while they're doing that, they're actively, passing things that are going to harm the students, harm the local community. And that is the problem. So like, I think it's very easy, I think sometimes for us to kind of like lean on the, get comfortable to be uncomfortable. And I think I had this conversation with someone earlier today of like, well, whose responsibility is it to make those other people uncomfortable? Right? Because we're at a point in American history, and we are living through history. I want everybody who's listening to be aware of that. We are actively living through history, is that there is a small, yet loud, and yet in control of a lot of levers of power in this country, whether it be at the local, state, or federal level, that absolutely do not see people like me and Rob as human beings. Absolutely.
I'll confirm that that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, we know. We know.
I know. I'm saying.
Like, so
outside looking in. That's
and the problem is that we're all. The thing is, all of us, no matter what you look like, are running out of time, if not have ran out of time. So my question then becomes, whose responsibility is it to make the uncomfortable, make people be comfortable being what's the phrase? Be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, so whose responsibility is that? Because people keep telling that to me and other Black people, like, we just got to do this. And it's like, well, who? Okay, well, what are you waiting on?
Well, and even like, I think when you ask whose responsibility, in a way, right? Like, first off, I think truthfully, like, it collectively is everyone's responsibility. I don't think any of this ends without white folks. It doesn't, right?
Not
Like,
at all.
whatever we're going through, like, it doesn't. However, I would say by us doing this podcast in the Union County and people watching it, we are doing, we're leaning it out. We're educating people. We're bringing on. We're trying to build bridges, if you will. Even though we're not like, I guess showing up and saying like, hey, we need you to be an ally. We're doing it in a way, right? But I'll let you answer, Reynolds, in terms of like, who do you think should be like saying, hey, I want to be the ally versus, hey, I want you to be the ally. Like, who should be reaching out to, and not necessarily us, but just in
right.
general.
Okay. I think I'm following. So, one, I'm not blowing smoke up y'all's ass by saying like you already, in my opinion, the fact that I had to sit and think and say, hey, is it a risk to my career? Is it a risk to my, XYZ, right? What if I say the wrong thing? Unfortunately, that, freedom of speech is number one. And what am I going to say that's wrong? It's people spinning the narrative improperly. But when it comes to like imperfect allies, if I needed a bill passed, right? The question you have to ask yourself, are you willing to work with folks that you fundamentally don't agree with on, like, let's say 98%, just to get that one thing moved forward? So my first question to you all, not just you two fellas, but like your audience is, are you willing to work with the Republican despite, instead of having this, I'm not saying this is y'all's stance at all, but I think in order to be successful, the us versus them narrative has to be ripped out, right? And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to rise above other people's bigotry or either unsightly or some shit that you don't want to hear. And you're going to be like, I got to stand with this guy. If it's a means to an end, the way I see it, you work a system to get what you want out of it, and then you can control it from within, as opposed to, does that make sense at all? Like, the first question is, will you work with a Republican hand in hand, or will you say, this guy, I'm not going to work with him because
I think we do.
I understand what you're saying from a structural level. You're saying like, what you're saying is like, will a Democratic politician work with a Republican politician to be able to meet in the middle? Now, the problem with that is, and this is why, since I've stepped down as chair of the Democratic Party, because I've seen it kind of on its holistic face, is like, it's not really the politicians that are, the politicians, yes, are an issue. They're a thorn in the side. They're a pebble in the shoe. They're an eyelash in the eye. The problem really is the voting base. Is because the voting base is doing things like, taking a weapon across state lines in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and shooting people at a Black Lives Matter rally, or hanging Trey Reed down in Mississippi, or hanging Javion McGee here in Hendersonville, North Carolina, or shooting a Mother AME church, right? There's people that are acting out the violence that is quelling people's ability to have political speech or be able to be a part of the political process. So when there are people who are elected to office that hold the pen and be able to create policy, are trafficking and exchanging in on the hatreds that they are helping foment on the people that have no power, right? It's all about class, not race. And I always go back to like, people love that thing currently, not that it's about class, not race, but again, historically and current day, when there was the genocide of the indigenous people, poor white people were not getting genocided, right? When there was chattel slavery for 246 years, Poor white people were not with us in the fields for a quarter of a millennium either. When there was legalized apartheid, there was whites only and black only, right? There wasn't like, well, poor whites, you guys use that thing too. So what we're saying is there are people that still get the, as W.E. Du Bois calls it, the currency, the socialized currency of race. So we have to try to dismantle the myth of whiteness, because that's a created term. It didn't exist before the 1600s. Before you are this thing called white, can you be what the Irish author Noel Ignatieff says? He is a traitor to his whiteness because he wants to tap into his shared humanity with all of us. That is the end game. And what we need is for people who are going to sit around these Thanksgiving tables, sit around these Christmas trees, sit around these menorahs, whatever the case may be, and say, like, listen, Uncle Ron, I can't kick it with you if you up here voting for racist people or saying racist shit or saying or bigoted things, because that's where it starts, and then it gets solidified in the schools and then codified into law and etched in stone. That's the long stretch of it.
I'll say. Let me give an example. So, and I'll give my perspective.
Hell of a kicker there at the end.
But even you said work with a Republican. Again, it's still, to me, it's objective. But here at the local, it's gone federally. They don't know what they don't want to work with Democrats. We'll look at whatever's going on. But if you look at Monroe, the mayor of Monroe is an absolute bigot. Has white nationalist, white Christian nationalist rhetoric. That there's nothing he called us extremists. And when we had on this North Carolina, when we had on the North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls on our podcast, in the middle of the podcast, he's calling us extremists and racist. And there's this anti LGBTQ and this anti woke and calling people radical, all of this stuff, right? Okay, I can't. Yeah, what are you going to work with? There's nothing to work with there. But then you have people on the council that I'm like, okay, these are sensible people who are and they don't like his ass either, right? But where we see the country going more and more is they're getting attracted to the culture war bullshit, and there's nothing you can have these conversations with or compromises, if you will. That is not how things. They still, to a degree, can work locally, but that's not really how things work anymore. I feel like we did that even with Kamala Harris. A lot of Democrats were told to. People, progressives were told to suck it up, right? She's not going to call it a genocide, and she's not going to do more. Sacrifice your beliefs and yourself. Sacrifice.
Let's go be with Liz Cheney, and let's go talk about the prosecutor
or Dick Cheney, right? And so I feel like I was down with the facade.
It's fuck it.
But now it's the curtain's up. The curtain's up. So
I understand. I'm sorry, gentlemen.
It's all good. It's all good. It's important we do this. It's all good, brother.
I'm not familiar with the gentleman from Monroe, but he sounds deplorable. Just based on, I know Ron personally. I know he's not a bigoted human being. I think you're hitting on something that kind of brings it's coming into focus to me now. So the fact that you're having this conversation somehow labels you, if you have let's say a dissenting opinion, somehow that makes you an extremist. Is that what I'm picking up?
Yeah, well, it makes sense though if you think about it though. This country was, again, it's always been the fascist country. You just have to ask. Well, hold on.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm not going to close my ears.
Well, you have to think about it. It depends on who you ask. You ask an indigenous person, is this country fascist, or does America, as we talk about Israel Palestine, does it have a right to exist? An indigenous person would say no. Settlers came over here, genocided us, brought billions of bacteria.
What about an Irishman?
Killed all. Right, but I'm saying, but we're ask them, right? And then you ask an enslaved person who's the descendant of Africans who were held captive for a quarter of a millennium, and they say, did you get the same rights? And then post-slavery, again, go back to Jim Crow or Jim and Jane Crow, legalized apartheid for 100 years, which again, racism is fashions a system of who has resources, who gets to keep people out of resources by creating an us versus them narrative, to your point earlier, Reynolds, about we have to get rid of the us versus them narrative. My only pushback to that sort of a perspective would be, well, who created it? And why is it always laid at the feet of those who are the most marginalized to rise above it? Why is it never laid at the feet of those who have the most power, i.e. privilege?
That is a fair point. Why it's that is the unfortunate situation that I think that you're 100% right on.
Yeah.
And what I specifically I mean is, why do I have to do the right thing despite these rules that I didn't create, the system that's on top of me? Why do I have to rise above it? And frankly, I don't have I wish I could have some kumbaya, like the best answer I have for that is, in order to win, sometimes it's not playing dirty, it's working within a system that's fundamentally against you.
I think Black folks in this country, Black Americans, have done just that. They've always saw the lesser of both evils is like means to an end, right? And so I think that facade in 2025, I don't think that it works anymore. I don't think that there's like we're clamoring, like people are still clamoring to go back to like 2024 in this where we could have that facade and say like, okay, there's this compromise. We're going to go into the chambers and we're going to have an agreement. And really, that was gone since Barack Obama. Obama. Like, there's no working with the other side of the aisle anymore.
Just real quick on that part, and I'm sorry, finish your point, Ron. But I just, for folks listening, we got to separate politicians from the people. Because sometimes we do that in our conversation. We're like, we got to, like, who's we?
When I say we, I'm talking about the people on this call, the people that are listening. And Ram, I really want you to. Well, let's hear the end of that. Yeah, I'm curious to.
No, I mean, yes, I think people can continue to work together. I think at least half our listeners are white and curious and always, and I've had many people say, hey, sometimes, it's a little hard to listen and hear those things. It's a little hard to hold up the mirror, but I feel like I'm learning, and it's like opening up and then some people, they say it's too much for me. And I said, well, like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is just kind of how we I've always, as a Black and Mexican, this ambiguous looking person, I've always had to
kind of Dwayne Johnson-esque, right?
Racially androgynous.
I've always had to navigate the world. I've always had to navigate the world
in a way,
whether it was even in a Black setting or Hispanic setting, or where I couldn't speak Spanish, or where people speak, or exactly. But I've always lived in a white world, and I've always seen things through that lens, and I've always had to, right? And that's fine.
Right.
Like, it's a majority white country, and I also need to be, as a strategic person, and I need to understand how I need to navigate those systems. I need to understand if I'm walking into a room with white men who have prejudices, I can pick that up quick, versus me walking into a room of white men who they're seasoned and they don't give a fuck, right? Like, they're not thinking. I can tell the difference between those two things, right? So that's like, for me, is like. And a lot of people, if I say these things, or Payron or whatever, we come in on these podcasts and we say, white folks this or white folks that. Well, if it don't, let it fly. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. Let it fly. The same way when we talk, So I don't like, when I talk about men. Like, yeah, most men are trash.
Most men are rape. Right. Well, so like, not me. It's like, I wouldn't be the one. Like, for example, if I was the way I tell people, like, I'm in a group full of women, and a woman says, there's 10 women. They say, men sexually assault, and I raise my hand. I'm like, well, not me.
You're right. Okay.
Fuck up. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah,
Like,
we're not talking to you.
You know,
But
it's
anyways,
that level, right? So, but go ahead. Sorry, bro.
But I think that these conversations is
But
like,
I think that's an apropos analogy, right? Because like that's fitting. You're outnumbered, or not outnumbered, but that's a very
so yeah.
I think that makes perfect sense. Like, don't take it personally. You're in a room of this people. Like, just take a second and listen.
Yeah,
and
I think the rhetoric, not rhetoric, but like the way that I take on these conversations now in 2024, we're at now, is a lot different than the more conservative. Even though I've always known that, like, this white supremacy and these root of these things was always there. It was more like, okay, Biden's president again. Like, I can chill. We can kind of kumbaya in those moments. Like, now I'm like, okay, that was a mistake, because like, here where we are now. Like, yeah. So, but I want to play a clip so you can kind of see a little bit about what's happening in Monroe. And then I want to talk about a conference I went to, not a conference, it was a Women in Technology Alliance event in Charlotte. It was a lunch, talked about AI bias, really great conversation. But
wait, AI bias?
Yes, so like, exactly. So I'm excited to talk about it. But here, let me play this clip just so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. Let me how do we get this going?
While you get that pulled up, one thing that I find interesting is, or I've noticed, actually, I'll be quiet.
Okay, so let me start this over here.
I mean, foremost, because of that man right over there, the freedom shirt and the rain camera, that is our mayor, Rob Burns. We cannot have unity with people who want to kill us, and we cannot make peace with wickedness. The Democrat Party has been captured by a wicked and demonic ideology and evil, and we cannot make peace with that. We should expect and even demand our elected representatives at the local, state, and federal level to do what they can to drive this wickedness out of our public squares so that we can live in peace again. And let me quote to you today with Stephen Miller. We all know who Stephen Miller is. I love Stephen Miller. I'm so glad that guy's in the White House. This is what he said today. He said, there is a vast domestic terror movement, and with God as my witness, we're going to use every resource we have throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks, and we will do it in Charlie's name. Now, I know, because I've talked to a lot of Christians about politics, that Christians don't often think like that when it comes to politics, but I'm telling you to know what time it is. And if you're a Christian, I don't think you should say anything else to what Stephen said other than, amen, get it done. Everybody look behind you. Look behind you here. What does that say? In God we trust. In God we trust. And which God is that, brothers and sisters? It's not some vague God. It's not the Hindu God. It's not the Buddhist God. That's not Muhammad. That is the one true triune God who made this world, who made you, and who calls you today to repent and believe and be made right with him through his Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. We must unapologetically work to make America Christian again. Because if we want to make America great again, there is no way we do it without making America Christian again.
All right, I'm gonna. So just so we're clear, this is William Wolf who was invited by the mayor of Monroe to come down. So this is the pipe. Like, when you say, "Can we work together?"
Who is that gentleman?
And he rubbed elbows with Steve Bannon. His name's William Wolf.
He's William Wolf. He lives in Monroe at this point. He worked for the Heritage Foundation. He was invited down by the mayor. This was his Charlie Kirk vigil. This was I actually saw this, and I called up Payron, and I said, like, what do we got to do here? Like, he's like, it's not our fight. I'm like, and to that point, I'm gonna put up a couple comments from the chat, and then I'm gonna let you comment too. But literally nothing changes until white men change themselves. White men view the world through a lens of ownership. We can't change for them. They have to change for us. Another comment, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Love that. How can you compromise with those that don't see you as human? Seriously. They call Democrats demonic. So again, the whole MAGA mantra implies that America was once great. If so, for whom? Who was it great? What made it great for them? To their point, we got to go back into a time pre-1960. Get rid of the Voting Rights Act. What I tell people these days is because they can't really most Americans have no idea barely have any idea what's going on. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, I don't know. Imagine segregation. Imagine The Handmaid's Tale. So you can at least start to wrap your mind around where we very well are going. I know how crazy it sounds, but it
doesn't sound. It's not as crazy as I didn't realize that this gentleman was. Your county sounds complicated. I'm gonna be honest.
Monroe is 50%. It's 49% white. It's 30% Hispanic, 20% Black. This isn't there's Klan stories here. I mean,
yeah, I was about to say. I was gonna say, during the time of the '60s and late '50s, 55% of the adult white population was came members of the Ku Klux Klan. One of the most
that
famous,
doesn't surprise me though either.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely no question. But the thing is, that legacy. Those people were grandparents. They were parents. They had children.
Yeah,
and now,
sure.
So and people want to act like, oh, it's just a different time. We've had a Black president. Now my son listens to hip hop. That is not how it works, right? These are systems. And when we talk about that quote about we said earlier about people treating people human, they'll say, well, I treat everybody human. I think we're all God's children. If you don't think that I'm human, you wouldn't allow people to live in a certain area to not have access to clean water. You wouldn't allow people to not have access to healthy food and living food deficits. You wouldn't allow people to have lack of education, right? Because if you get those things, we're talking about power, right? Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture once said, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. If he has the power to lynch me, that is my problem. Racism is not a difference of opinion. It is a articulation of power. So when we're talking about these systems, it's not just interpersonally, because that mayor actually ended up putting an APB on me, during the Charlie Kirk situation. Oh my God! And I made this video, it went viral, and someone said that I'm going to put that nigger in a Hefty bag. And so, my kids, I called the police just to put on the record. I don't trust the police, but I just put on the record.
Did that help at all?
Not at all. So my son sees me. My son.
I don't mean to laugh,
dude. It's all good. It's all good. Because you gotta laugh to keep from crying at a certain point. So my kids are outside with the sheriff, and I'm talking to the sheriff. I'm like, Mr. Officer, that person, they will put this nigger in the trash bag. I said, you see, my two children here, they might want to put these two niggers in trash bags. And of course, the cop was turning red and all blushing. But we want to just show you that's how real it is for us. And a lot of times when racists interject with us, they think that they are the first time we are dealing with racism. They don't realize we deal with it all the time, every day.
And when this Charlie Kirk thing happened, and the NCAA, the NAACP, they got involved. Black churches were talking amongst another, we need to make sure we're protecting ourselves. It wasn't it was like a fever pitch. This was when everybody was click-clacking away, trying to get everyone fired on, for any kind of criticism that came towards. I mean, people were scared. So it's, and then they go into the city town square, right? And they have these things. And I called up here. I'm like, what do that to me was it was this is going into a whole other direction, not just here in Monroe, but this is a microcosm of what's happening across America, in my opinion. And that was when and he said, there's nothing we can do. This isn't our fight. And to this day, I'm like, he's absolutely right. And so, and there's another clip from Daniel Moody that again resonated a couple weeks ago that we posted that went viral. But it was white folks, until they feel the pain, meaning that first off, the point wasn't that they should feel pain, but there's a lot of white folks. That sounds
like revenge.
No, because the reason, because they could.
The thing is, but who would the pain be coming from? it wouldn't be coming from black
That's a
people.
great
It would be coming
question.
from
I don't know.
it would be coming from other systemic white people. It'd be people who created the conditions, which will then end up hurting white people. That's the point of Daniel Moody's point, was that until white people feel the brunt of the systemic oppression that black, brown, Asian immigrants, LGBTQ people feel through the police, through not having access to food, through not having clean water, through not having access to the same resources,
to losing
then
their
you will
farms,
realize
to losing all of these things.
we're on the same
then
boat.
they're realize, because we'll say like our politics is like, look, healthcare, everyone should be taken care of. Everyone should have a joyful, bountiful life, right? Humanity, like whether you're, even if you are racist and white, like we're not out there saying like we're not out there saying like not this person. It's just like
so
it doesn't matter.
So
go ahead, Reynolds.
One, speaking to that video, I mean, that is I consider myself a Christian, and that is
As
one.
do I.
It's all the same God. It's Yahweh. It's Allah. It's God. There's no different. Like the fact that he just missed a Judeo-Christian fundamental 101. It just should tell you how much this person knows about anything, which is not much, right? Like, who's God? If you start going to that and you miss that easy point, the rest of it is deplorable what he had to say.
But this is mainstream. This is becoming.
I'm not discounting it. I will say what these folks have are unfortunately, hate is a hell of a lot easier to understand. Like from
my God,
I'm talking about straight up talking points, right? Their message is easy, and I won't speak for y'all, but just seeing that, it doesn't overwhelm me, but I could see how folks feel defeated, and angry. And my first thought is, okay, how do you organize a counter? And
that was my first thought too. That was my first thought too. I think that question, I'll let you answer it because it might be rhetorical towards us, and it's also something that like you don't have to necessarily have the answer for it today, right? But like, yeah, I'll let you answer before I further comment.
No, I think you're picking up exactly what I'm putting down. It's so the storyline of hate in my, let's say from a scholastic standpoint, because y'all live it, right? Is that the talking points are easy. So the talking track has to, and it's unfortunate how easy their talk track is because the kids can pick it up easily, and it's just so like. So I guess my first question thought would be, okay, what do we stand for? Say the folks or the Democrats in Monroe County. What are the three things that we're gonna get like? XYZ. If I put the metaphorical gun to your head, what does being a Democrat stand for in Monroe County? What are the three things that bring you all together? And that's what we're going to fight for, and something to rally behind, because unfortunately it feels, at least in my experience, it seems a little disjointed, the efforts, or maybe that's the version that I'm fed. I'm understanding.
That's fair. I'll say that's fair, Reynolds. I think that's what you get from a non-homogeneous political party, right? We only have two options, right? Is that everybody wants to have their thing first, right?
True.
If I'm a woman, I want to have women's rights first. If I'm queer, I want to have queer rights, right? If I'm black, so like all that is very important. Now the problem with that is that, to your point, why it's easy, because when you're homogeneous, when you're predominantly male, predominantly white, you could just say they're coming for us,
and then everyone,
oh my God, we're going to take up pitchforks and we're going to go burn downtown. We've seen this, whether it be in Wilmington, North Carolina, whether it be Ocala, Florida, whether it be Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's happened countless times, right? So there's just a level of like, when Rom asked me after that video came out, like, what do we do? And I'm like, what do you want us to do? Right? They're saying that at the end of the day, I want to kill them, which is not true. Again, me and Rom just said on this podcast, we want them to have access to clean water. We want them to have integrity and respect in society. We want them also to have access to healthcare. We want them to have access to education and books. If they don't want those things for themselves, because when we talk about racism and how it's so dehumanizing, before you can dehumanize someone else, you have already dehumanized yourself. You've said that, because you've already said that I can kill that person, maybe not through a gun or through a knife, but through policy, through the machinations of the American ideal, the American body politic, and
put them in cages.
Once you get to that part,
through 1,000 paper cuts.
Absolutely. Once you get to that point, the hollowness of what your perspective is has to be rooted in oppositional politics. So, for example, if let's just say I came up with something to your point about the 3 points, and let's say I say like I'm for something that we all can agree on. I don't know what it is, but let's just say option A. Sure. Inherently, they would say we're against that, even if it benefits them. And Jonathan Metzl has a fantastic book, Dr. Jonathan Metzl, called "Dying of Whiteness."
What was the book? I'm sorry.
"Dying of Whiteness" by Dr. Jonathan Metzl. And in the book, he opens up in his prologue where he's talking to a gentleman in Tennessee named Trevor, and Trevor's got an oxygen tube tied to his, and he's up there like sitting there in Tennessee, and this is back when the ACA was getting rolled out, and he said, with these Obama, these Affordable Care Act expansions help you here in Tennessee, and he said, I'll never forget it. He said, I would rather die before giving that to some Mexican. And what happened to Trevor? He died. And that is what we're seeing on a grand scale, is this fervor, this hysteria that, again, we didn't do that. If anything, our people throughout history have only tried to force this thing to be the professed values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we know we weren't getting those things. In the way, last thing I'll say here, I'll let you have it, Reynolds, is that to really crystallize it for people. My mother was born in 1962, which means in this project known as the United States of America, she was not born a full person. The same way maybe your mother or grandmother was, right? She did not have the rights to be a full citizen. The Civil Rights Act wasn't passed. She did not have the right to vote if she wasn't a person of age. My grandmother didn't vote until Barack Obama. Because by that time, you got to think, when she was a grown woman, she had been, they had said, how many bubbles are in this bar of soap? How many jelly? I mean, so many times, right? She's like, okay, I don't think that this is for me. A system where you do not have any form of redress with power. And if you were, it was at the brunt of a gun. How many stories my grandmother told me about the Klan showing up down in Alabama, hence why they moved to Pittsburgh? How many times they told me how the sheriff showed up with a shotgun at the polling location, that you niggers get out of here. So like all that stuff is rooted in a system to maintain power and dominance. And then last thing I'll say, I know I said kick too, but this is the last thing I promise. Yeah. I follow this guy that he's went all around the world, and he's tracked how other countries that we would consider dictatorships or tin pop dictatorships, and how they rig elections. And it could be through force, coercion, through whatever. And he says the way we rig the rig elections here in this country is through drawing maps. Yeah, that's how we do it here. Now we don't want to say, we want to give it a name, gerrymandering. Of course, we know the history of gerrymandering. Sorry. That's how it happens, right? So, and we don't address that, and we just say, well, the Republicans do that and the Democrats do this, instead of saying the system itself has a fail-safe, parachute pull that will always maintain white dominance, always maintain patriarchal dominance, always maintain class dominance, always maintain straight dominance. That is what is happening. And until we can articulate that and just say it clear and not be afraid, because, our friend, our boss, our neighbor, our husband, our wife, or whatever may not like that. If we can't look ourselves in the mirror, then we can absolutely not progress. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Reynolds.
No, there's nothing to be sorry about. First of all, for me, it makes me angry to hear that story on behalf. We just met, 20 minutes ago.
We met an hour.
I don't know. I don't know.
4 minutes ago. An hour and 4 minutes ago.
Well, time's flying. I'm having fun over here.
That's right, man.
It's I think
it's hard to see the sense of urgency, right? And it's not like, I've been under the sheets or whatever, but
Not those
The
sheets.
sheets? Yeah, I was like, under the sheets. Under the sheets. What you talking about? No, I
Under the
think
sheets
a lot
dreaming.
of it is. I mean, some of it's processed real time. Like, oh, your mother, 1962. Yeah, like
That's
my
right.
mother
Yeah.
too, right? Like, so
Not one full person.
but
So the question is it infiltration? How do you beat the system? Is it revolution, infiltration?
at this point,
Hearts
the
and
only answer is
minds.
revolution. At this point, the only answer is
Okay, I mean,
revolution.
and another example, like for example, the shirt that I'm wearing, pay black farmers, right?
Yeah.
Black farmers at the end of Reconstruction, which was in 1877, the black farmer population represented the same amount as that we had as a populace. We were about 14% black farmers, 14% black people population.
South Carolina, it was
over the
more,
past century. Today, you know how many what percentage of farmers are black?
I do not know. No.
2%. And that was through eminent domain. That was through land grabs. That was through outright violence. That was through theft. That was through burning down crops. That was through not having assured loans for black farmers. So we're talking about like hearts, minds. It's always been a violent system, right? These black farmers will tell you themselves. Oh, I had someone come pull up on this is a farmer heard a story of him last year. Some white boys rode up with some shotguns on my farm and saying, "You better not plant this shit." So there's levels like, oh well, just to call the sheriff, he might be down with the sheriff.
Yeah,
these are systems that we're trying to fight. I'm sorry, go ahead, Reynolds.
I don't know why that statistic. Farmers are salt of the earth people.
Are all farmers?
Well, hold on. I'm like, that the ones I know are God-fearing, salt of the earth people. You would think that humanity would be the most seen at that level. Like, what I mean is they're not simpler. What I mean is that for some reason, ownership of land is like the most fundamental value or way that society values you. And I know that sounds weird.
No, I think it's spot on historically.
And in order to, I know I'm kind of having a oh shit moment as I'm thinking it. Like, in order for
it's all good, brother.
And that's unfortunate, especially with farm, because the subsidies for farmers are amazing at the moment, and that's why you don't see black farmers flipping out right now. You see a lot of white farmers. Oh my god, because they never got the subsidies. I've only seen small scale black farming in South Carolina personally.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Out in Iowa, who knows? But
not a lot of us out there.
And that's unfortunate, because some of our most the crops that are most where we have the most money typically come from the African continent, which is kind of a weird.
But the thing is like regardless of whether they're racist or not, like they voted for this administration, these farmers.
Okay.
But for what? Like, they had those subsidies coming plentifully through the Biden administration. Matter of fact, Biden even because there was discrimination against black farmers, Biden also secured that money for those farmers too. So everybody was eating. The farmers were eating. Like, you know what I mean? They were getting, and then they vote for Trump. Now they've lost if they're in the soybean business, they've lost that.
Oh yeah, dude, I've never seen
here's the thing, because even if they're not racist, like racism is a spectrum, right? They might not be out in Klan hoods and calling people N-words and all of those things, but they might go online and be like, hey, get those get those illegals out of here or whatever. I think a lot of it is like because they're not face to face with folks, that they can just kind of vote for or whatever and say whatever online and have this anonymous vision. But anyways, I want to shift gears a little bit if you guys.
Okay. Can I make one?
Go ahead.
I think he had something chewing over there.
Go ahead.
By no means am I speaking for farmers. What I will say is,
come on now, Reynolds. Speak for all the farmers. Listen, come on, man. What are we doing?
I love the folks that handle our food. Do I think big industry is getting into it? Yeah, but When I was a lobbyist in Georgia, it was the first like stop and frisk, but specifically targeting the Hispanic community for looking for papers. And I've never seen, like, I forget the date, but I've never seen a group of folks. It was farmers who got together for better or worse when the onion crop came through in Vidalia, Georgia. The Hispanic population, most of which was illegal at the time, they lost their entire workforce, and their asses were in Atlanta the next day. They tried to empty the jails to have them pick the Vidalia onions, and the prisoners were like, "No, we're not doing this," because it was breaking work. So from an immigration standpoint, not to like switch the I don't know many, in my experience, I don't know many farmers that are for strict immigration, but I also don't live along the, Texas, or Texas,
Yeah,
Arizona,
we'll have to have
nor do I want to be.
we'll have to have a farmer on here, but to your point and to their point, it was that economic hit that was probably what really got them out their seat. But
Dude,
again,
at the end of the day, it's economics, unfortunately.
But that's the pain that I don't know that they have to feel because they're probably not going to get rounded up into.
When you say that, Reynolds, you say is the economics unfortunately for me for farmers, or if you mean just the voting patterns, people in general? Like, what do you mean by that?
So I will say that everyone says it boils down to economics. It's true, but there's humans behind these numbers. So like you'll hear war of northern aggression as opposed to civil war, and people will right away that it's about states' rights as opposed to But at the end of all the explanation, there is the economy of the South was on the backs of. They say it's the economy. Well, the economy was on the backs of slaves. So again, it's always it's a captive economy. So when we say it's all about the economy, it is, but people aren't seeing the humanity behind.
They can hide behind certain words, right? They can say like, "Oh, I voted on immigration. I voted on the economy. I voted on job. I voted on this." It's like, well, at the end, I think to your point, and I think sadly, I think what we're all kind of in agreement here is that this is the toll of racism that goes across, and it does impact everybody, right? That because ultimately what we're saying is that the reason people of color, Black people specifically, outright rejected this administration more than any other demographic in the country is because we understand what it's like to live under the most violent, vile, white supremacist people, because we've dealt with them. I've had a bunch of racist teachers, I have racist bosses, I have racist neighbors. And the thing is, if you ask those people, they would all say, I'm absolutely not racist, because they don't get to, they're not feeling the fire of the flamethrower that they're shooting at other people. Saying, I'm holding this, I'm not feeling this. Now, when we're looking at these systems, what we're trying to say,
I like that analogy,
that you are actually going to be impacted by that as well. Sadly, it is that the majority of people, adults, I should say, Black, white, doesn't matter, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, read at or below a fifth or sixth grade level, 54%, right? So what does that mean? That means that they lack critical thinking. They don't understand laws, policy, white papers. And that means they will put their trust in someone that looks like them, right? Whether it be a Tucker Carlson or a Donald Trump or whoever that says, who's talking confidently and fast and just giving you stats and numbers. And
everything that they want to be.
Right. It's like, well, that sounds right. And he's saying things that I also agree with, because that's
better than.
Yeah. And he says something and what that guy says on television is what my granddad used to say back in the 70s. That's what this guy is saying on TV now. Yeah. I'm going to trust this guy. And the thing is, these are all wealthy people that are backed by billionaires, meant to say, I mean, why they're saying these things is to have a cleave amongst us so we can come together to say, hold on, we all need to be able to say we all deserve these things. So
so
and they're very, unfortunately, they've been very successful.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
And to your first, like when I I don't have the answer, and when y'all
Why
have one,
not?
let me know. When you do, let me know.
on.
But I think that not to make this self-important, but the fact that we can have this conversation without wanting to, I don't know. I'm enjoying this.
Well,
I
you're a
don't even know how much.
you're a
I don't
sensible
even know how
man.
much time has passed. This has
We
been
can,
fun.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can definitely do it again, and I think
can do this
you
for
have more
hours.
of these conversations.
We should
But I
just
do
do it
want to
again.
touch on
Yeah.
touch on a couple things. One thing that happened this week on
Oh, yeah.
Friday, I believe. So Friday, I went to a Women Technology Alliance event, a luncheon in Chicago, in Charlotte. And Charlita Hatch was on the panel, who I didn't actually know, but she is the I think the director or a chief of data analytics for the city of Charlotte. Also found out she's also running for the CMS school district seat, District 6, I believe, or District 1. She's running against Melissa Easley and a gentleman named Bill Fountain, Bill Fountain's a Republican who doesn't think that LGBTQ people are human. So again, people you wouldn't want near your children.
Is he in real estate?
He might be. I don't know.
Okay.
Do you know? Is that your guy?
No, I just sorry.
But anyways,
I don't know him personally.
So one of the things that she talked about, or it was a panel of women here in Charlotte in technology, AI. The conversation was about AI authenticity, and one of the topics was around bias. And she and her friend, a white woman, white mother, Charlita's a black woman. They ran it through, I don't know, GPT, and they gave the exact same. Hey, I have children. They like to play soccer. They like to have fun. Da 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 da. And the only thing they said different was, I'm a black mother and I'm a white mother. And they were looking for, the question was, tell us about the schools, the best schools in the area. And the output for the black woman was all Title I schools. And then for the white woman, it was private schools in the area and things like that, right? And so there's like, okay, that's one area of bias. And I think as we all start to use AI, have to have awareness of that bias, right? And people say AI can't be biased, AI can't be racially biased. Well, actually, I mean, yes, if you understand the technology and how it's trained, and it could use it could use that speech we just played 10 minutes ago. But those things are built into the systems, and right, they talk about things like human in the loop. So having a human actually review these things before, as you start using it in business and things like that. So anyways, I used ChatGPT to create our episode art. I ran the description through GPT today. And basically, if you look at our YouTube description, this is what I ran through. And let me see if I can move this out the way here. This is what it came up with. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I looked at it again and I said, wait a minute. Is this a black man naked? Is that Kunta Kinte? Is he, what's happening here? Like, and they say like,
I wasn't going to say anything, Rom, but
but even I was
exactly
like,
the thought I had. I'm sorry.
He's like, he's not even close.
Sorry, I don't know.
And then Payron's like, he doesn't even have.
Yeah, and it was funny.
Facial features.
Last election, in 2024, Tim Scott from South Carolina was running for president, and I don't know if you guys remember what his campaign ads looked like. He was a faceless. It was a car by Tim Scott, like pointing or something, but he was faceless, nondescript, no sort of articulation of features. And that is what is most palatable to white supremacy, something that does not shock, that does not have a human form, because we are not human. We are something to be off in the shadows, off in the corner, to not be a person. But then I thought it was interesting when he sent this to me. And I said, but we have a fully articulated man who believes himself to be white, right? This idea that like he's the man, he's the human being. We are all just these dark shadows. And going back to the Congolese book about the dark continent in Africa, is like this is this level of like we are all just these faceless, nameless people that could be exchanged out and just thrown out. But and it is to a degree, this is what we're dealing with on not just a technological level, but a sociological level. And until we can deal with that, we're only gonna get more of this AI slop or more of this AI biases, and get more of these more asymmetrical outcomes.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say with regards to that is Tim Scott might be a shell of like that. That's
true.
It might be right.
That lines up, right?
Yes.
But that's
Anyways,
a faceless person.
Needless.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Reynolds.
Like having conversations with Rom and folks in my life, this would have never come across my lens had I not.
Yeah.
Well, it would. I think it would have. It would have. Yeah, it would have.
Eventually, maybe.
Well, even for me, like I think eventually, like I had the conversation Friday, right, and then a couple hours later, I hear the story, so I want to go talk about. Anyways, this is the one we end up going with because they dressed up, right? So, anyways, but like the reason why I was fresh in my mind was because I went to this thing on Friday. As you know, I'm building a product, an AI product. Ethics is at the core of it for me, and Friday evening or afternoon, I'm reading a story about a AI detecting a gun in a black teenager's hand, and it's a Doritos bag. And I see the video, and I'm like, I mean, that doesn't even look like, it doesn't even look like a gun. Here, I'm going to share that real quick.
So this AI platform is a security platform. Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Yeah, it's you.
So here, I'll just play. Let me see.
Keep your hands on your head.
Bigger here.
Keep walking towards me.
Baltimore County Police handcuffed and searched a high school student after his school security system, which is powered by AI, flagged the teen's empty bag of chips as a possible firearm.
I was just holding a Doritos bag like this. It was two hands in, one hand out, and one finger out, and it was like they said it looked like a gun.
Kenwood High School student Takai Allen said he was waiting for a ride home with friends after football practice when about 8 police cars showed up at the school. He said at least one gun was pointed at him.
They searched me, and they figured out I didn't have nothing. Then they went over there to where I was standing, found the bag of chips on the floor.
A district spokesperson said the district security department canceled the alert after confirming there was no weapon. But Kenwood principal Kate Smith didn't immediately know that and reported the matter to the school resource officer, who called local police for support. The incident is leading some Baltimore County officials to call for a review of how the high school uses the AI gun detection system.
It was a scary situation. It's nothing I've been through before.
Baltimore County's superintendent said reviewing the system and security, quote, is part of our regular practice. Meanwhile, Omnalert, the company that makes and monitors the security system, expressed regret over the incident, but said, quote, the process functioned as intended to prioritize safety and awareness.
Wait a minute.
It didn't.
What was going on? Was that?
Oh, that was a different one. So, and I can show the picture that he had. But
so was that like an actual?
That last clip was actually how it's supposed to work.
I was about to say the way his hands canted and stuff like that, but
yeah. So
that group has some explaining to do.
So, and they said, "Oh, it worked as intended." Well, no, it didn't work as intended, right? Because I think. Well, here's the thing: is like, oh, well, it works the way they were supposed to. With like how long would it have taken for a human to look at to be presented with the still or the photo and say like, okay, this is legitimate versus calling the authorities, or even while you call the authorities, look at this picture, right? Because it should have something. There needs to be a human in the loop. If we're going to start trusting AI, right? And the other thing is like, okay, well, you need to have logs. You need to have the audit trail, like. So why did the AI determine? I don't actually know that the AI determined why the AI determined it. My suspicion is that it saw a black man. It saw a black man, with the afro. It saw, certain things that factored in again to its decision that, hey, there's a more likelihood that this is a threat, as opposed to if it was a white man with the Doritos bag, even the reflection of a hand. I mean, all of those things go into it. But if we can't actually go back and look at these logs and look at the trail of how it made this determination, and we're just leaving AI into this black box, and we're just letting it make its decisions, that's a problem in itself. And these are the type of things in like this discussion on Friday in this luncheon, right?
Okay.
This discussion right now of people who are in AI, like, have to have these decisions talking about race, talking about ethics, talking about how we allow AI to, surveil our lives, how we rely on technology and big tech to surveil our lives. Because Palantir, I hate to say it, Reynolds, you're probably on a terrorist watch list now. Now that you've joined us on this episode, because
see you in the gulag, brother. See you in the gulag.
I'll let y'all know. I'll let y'all know how it goes.
But
well,
and
Ron, just to this point, as someone who's had police pull guns on me for doing absolutely positively nothing, and what it does to you. I mean, but the reason that they did it, they said I couldn't turn around, I couldn't look at them, gun to the back of my head. They didn't tell me why they were pulling me over. I had a friend that actually pull up. They just saw this happening and saw this was years ago. I was in college, and they told him to get the fuck out of here. And the next day, I tried to. This is on my campus police at University of North Carolina at Greensboro. I called the police station. I was like, hey, who was that police officer? I'm not going to tell you. So there's already a system that's already biased, and within a blink of an eye, you can lose your life. And the excuse that I was fearing for my life is valid and actually can be used to get out of murdering people. So when we layer on top of that the human error of a police officer who may not be as savvy with AI, who may not know the AI ethics, who may not understand. But then again, I think about when Mike Brown was shot and killed. That he was 16 years old, just like this young boy. That what did the police officer say to get out of that? That he was hulking, he was giant, he was bigger. Those types of things are used to justify our murder. Right, so it's already a system where we are disproportionately killed when we don't have any sort of arms. White people are also killed by police. The difference is the unarmed and the lack of threat. That is the difference of the disproportionality. So it's already a system where it's and now we have a president who, when he was running for office, said, "I'm going to give police full immunity." Right, so it's almost like it's a delusion. Again, and to our point earlier of 3 or 4 conversations ago of being like, what are we supposed to do about this? Man. Like if people believe inherently that we are violent people, if people believe inherently that we are just these murderous creatures that want to shoot and murder and kill cops, and there's no proof of that besides we saying we want to have education and we know that's what mitigates crime and crime intervention and all those things. And anytime we say that, it's like, no, we just need more police officers who, again, and we all have been to high school and college. Let me ask both of y'all real quick, and then I'll kick it to Reynolds or Ron, is that the folks from our high schools that became police officers, were they the top students?
No.
Okay.
So are you trying?
Yeah, I was like, wait.
I'm just saying, like these were not the folks that went on to summa cum laude at some institutions. So it's a self-selecting role.
I'm fine with saying that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, but we've got to be real about it. It's like it's a self-selecting role. There's a reason I didn't become a police officer. There's a reason probably Ron did, or my wife or whoever. So there's a level of like the system. So,
yeah, I do think there's a few archetypes in terms of like who does go on to become police officers, and I think that's absolutely something that, again, needs to be exploring. There's a reason why they had anti-bias training and things that happened in post 2020 and those things that, to me, I was like, yeah, because even I can hold bias too. Like I could definitely, I've held bias, I've held bigoted views and points in my life, right? So for Taps to say that, oh well, I don't need it, and what's the David Dotson, the former mayor pro tem of bro, he felt like he didn't need ethics training. He's a grown man, and I don't need ethics training, and I don't need get off your high horse. Like we can all use a little bit of leadership training. We can always be better about ourselves. And so, I think any police force that feels like they don't need those things or they're above it all, they're lying to themselves, right?
Yeah. So, when you have bias mixed with power,
that's
as James Baldwin said.
And so
we have ignorance mixed with power. That is the gravest threat to democracy.
So now we're giving the power to computer systems. We're giving computer systems the decision making of like we're going to allow the collateral damage of killing innocent Palestinians because you know what? There's one high priority
Blow 'em
target.
all
It
up.
used to
Fuck
be
'em.
that
They're all faceless. They're all
they
faceless
were
people,
doing
right?
they were doing drones, and it would be somebody making that decision. Even at some points, maybe even President Barack Obama
No
himself,
question.
whoever himself.
he had the most prolific use of
He sure
drones.
did.
Now they can
But
wipe
it was also new
themselves.
technology. So
Now they can wipe their hands clean and let a computer system make that determination. Say, well,
It's
the computer
algorithm.
made that decision. The algorithm made that decision. So when we're talking about who we're giving power to, and especially like everyone should be worried about this, I think that this is,
I completely agree that when it comes to potential kinetic outcomes, where lives are at risk, I agree with you 100%, Ron, that you can't, if there are kinetic outcomes, there has to be a human in between in that decision-making chain, right?
Yeah.
So I'm agree, but it also highlights something like, of course, your, let's say, technology baby is going to inherit, and I didn't even think about it because it's not my day to day, which is my privilege, right? That's looking at my own. That's kind of like pretty much explicit proof that there is inherent bias when a technology that should be unencumbered by human error, or not human error, but the history of everything that comes into the formation of us through experience, through history. Like, if this inanimate object has that from nowhere, do you get what I mean here? Like, if without all that context and history, how does it have that bias?
It gets the bias. It gets the bias the same way we get bias as humans from our what we're taught, from what we learned.
That's a red flag.
So exactly. So and to say that it doesn't exist, and to say whether it's humans or computers, then we're not being serious, right? So we need to train ourselves. We need to train these technologies to be aware of data, manipulated data, to be aware of narrative, to be aware of over police, to be aware, whatever it may be, right? Sometimes you go to I guess I don't know if
Wash your hands.
you, but I go to wash my hands, and I'd be having to fucking turn my shit over, like.
Wait, what?
Like,
I mean, and that's a well-known thing. I mean, there's research on this. The self-censor for the soap dispensers.
Oh yeah.
Is that it doesn't pick up on black hued skin.
Sometimes I'm like,
yeah, and it's not just anecdotal. I mean, again, there's research behind this, because if you say a hand standard looks like this, or this is when we go back to the system of white supremacy. If you say a person, especially when conservatives say shit like American voters, teachers, children, they're leaving out the silent word, which is white. And that's what they're trying to. And so when those people go into positions of power and they say a hand looks like more of my palm than it does the backside of me, and they run that through, maybe just a few different variations of color, and that's ultimately what a hand looks like. It can lead to outcomes. Then go back to the
and these things, when people develop these things, and it's not malicious necessarily.
No,
right?
it's
not necessarily.
It's just based off. Right. It's based off who's in the room. Like,
right.
If you go into like if you have a DEI team and it's all white men, I don't know how that's going to turn out, right? Like, but you have different outcomes with women, with people of color, with people who have different backgrounds.
I said that.
All kinds of different things, right? And so it's like, and people just need to acknowledge that, like, it ain't like everyone just goes into a room. It's like, well, how can we make our technology racist? Like, so, and by us talking about it, it's not us just on some like what would they call a woke crusade? No, it's what's the opposite.
Well, perhaps it's an opportunity, Rom. Like, if because if we see that there's a glitch, in the system, if it was engineered, shouldn't we be able to break it down and figure out how it became that way?
Exactly.
And then we can learn from technology.
If they care. And again, they don't have like.
If they care.
The thing is like they don't have to. The same way that they don't have to live in our shoes. They don't have to live from that perspective. They don't have to have that responsibility. And
they
I
don't
think one of the worst things
that system.
One of the worst things in the world. So I think Biden put out I think it was an executive order. And he said, here's how the groundwork of what we're doing with AI, some of the regulatory things that are coming, some of the ethical things that are coming. And Trump came in and said, fuck all that. We're not regulating AI for the next 10 years. I think that was probably one of the worst decisions. It's detrimental because anything without regulation is crazy. Like cybersecurity, like I understand what can be done. I think AI is the gift and the curse. I do. I think the curse is going to outweigh the gift at some point, unfortunately. But that's crazy. To just say, like, because if you understand how AI works and how it can take the data and manipulate and do whatever, it's crazy that we're saying that there's no regulations, no ethics, no thought about those things. You don't have to have those thoughts. And here's the thing: in the real world, I go out to these luncheons and we're talking about race, we're talking about diversity in these rooms full of white folks, in these rooms full of men and women, in these rooms full of black folks, in these rooms full of brown folk. Like in the real world, we're talking about these things responsibly, right? We're thinking about these things. In counties, in the mayor of Monroe, and people like William Wolf are talking about who's eating with their hands and who's gay and who's running into the wrong restroom. Like, you're talking about these things, you wokey, you wokest, leftist extremists. Like, that's the disconnect. I go into all these conferences and people are still talking about diversity. People are still talking about these things, right? So, I do think that there are people who have these responsibilities. There's no regulations in the United States. There is in Colorado, right? But even before that, there was organizations, enterprise companies, banks in Charlotte that were looking at the EU, what the EU is doing with AI. They were looking at Colorado and using those things. So, like, people are still doing it, but I think it's extremely reckless at our own government. And one of the reasons why is Doge, because they needed Doge to go run up and do everything what they wanted with our data, right?
I was gonna say, was Musk? Forgive my ignorance, but was Musk? I've seen or heard clips of him saying, like, we should be worried, but was he for or against? Do y'all recall if he was for or against deregulating?
I don't know for sure. My assumption would be he's against deregulating. The crazy thing, and we come from a IT and cybersecurity world. Regulations is good for business for multiple reasons. One, because it gives people like me a job, right, to adhere to those things.
Also good for the consumer too.
Exactly,
but it's not good for profits. In the short term. In the long term, it's very bad for profits. But the thing is, we have megalomaniacs and egotistical people running corporations, or who are, jockeying for more power and for deregulation, whether it be in food, whether it be in transportation, whether it be in technology. We're going to get these anti-democratic outcomes, which do not help the plurality of citizens. And that's where we as people got to say, hey, I care that a black kid in Baltimore, if I was a white man or an Asian man or a Latino man, I need to care about that, because that sort of an error does not need to happen. And to your point earlier, Reynolds, of like, shouldn't we fix that? It's like, well, again, and Ron's know I'm big on this show about saying this, who is the we? Like, who needs to go and change that? And if you don't have if let's say it's an organization that's against the diversity hiring, they fired the black people, and now you don't even have those brains in there thinking about, is this a problem? It's more of like, oh, it's an error. It ain't going to happen again. It's going to be a very low threshold. It's not going to happen to the people that we care about. Again, do we care about making changes? But at point being, look, we're at an hour 37.
I see what you're saying. Like, they're trying to get funding, and the last thing they want is to hear that. What's up?
We're just thanking one of our guests. She said we always had the best conversations. We said that.
Okay. You're right. Like, I mean, Ron, that resonates with us on our own personal, professional journeys. Like, we're trying to get funding. Or we should, the last thing we want is bad press. So you put down the, it doesn't resonate, but you see how.
I'll say it like this. I'm a chief information security officer, and the things that we're supposed to care about is confidentiality of the data, integrity of the data, and availability of the data. All three of those things are out the window in terms of our entire federal government. So that should tell you something right there, right? Like, we're it's done. Like you can't come back from that.
Right.
Like you
can't.
you just
as
can't.
I like
Like,
to say, you can't unfire a gun. Like once it's like you can't bring the gun, put the bullet back in. The shell casing's out, and that's kind of what's happening daily. And you know,
even with all this AI video, this stuff they put out, like I've always said for the last two years or so, that the biggest threat to not just like businesses and companies, but the United States in general, or even the world, is misinformation and disinformation. So whether it's accidental or intentional, right? Because I do believe that AI will unintentionally start a world conflict. And it does to it does to, I mean, they've been doctoring videos forever. Now it's just easy to just do.
Yeah.
And you can stir up you know, something in another country. You can stir up something here. They have us, you know, battling each other on social media and so forth.
Our biggest threat is
Cuomo. So I'm going to do a quick little switch. Cuomo leveraged AI. He threw out a video. It was a very racist video, I might say. Are you working for
Cuomo slander?
No, I'm kidding.
All right, but you know, so we'll close it out here. But in talking about allies, I mean, the Democratic Party can't even have. They're not even allies with their own people.
Yes.
You know, Zohran Mamdani won a democratically elected primary.
Yeah,
and he still could not get the backing of, you know, the people that say.
Well, you got Hakeem Jeffries the day before early voting,
and you got Cuomo, who was accused by 13 women of sexual harassment, and you still now we forget about it. We have amnesia.
I will say this. I will say this. Curtis Sliwa, the Republican that's running, he said one of the lines that just sticks with me. He called. He said Cuomo he slaps the fannies and killing grannies. I love that shit. That shit is one of the best lines because you know he put those elderly people in the elderly home. They died of COVID. So he said he's slapping fannies and killing grannies. Killed me. I was dying to death.
I mean, that's pretty good.
That's a good political line. That's a good line. Reynolds. Any final thoughts? We've held you out a long time, but thank you so much for coming on. But any final thoughts you got, Reynolds?
I've got a lot of thoughts right now, and I think
we're gonna do it again. We're gonna do this again, hopefully.
I was gonna say I think that's what this is all about, and I really appreciate y'all having me, and I hope it made some other folks think it. Definitely watching y'all's content. It's not just entertaining, it's educational, and I wish y'all both. I hope I get to come back someday. I'll let you know about the APD or APB on me. If
Send us a carrier pigeon.
Yeah, I'll send you smoke signals. But it's been an absolute pleasure. You know, we'll talk about. I can't wait to show this to everyone, and thanks for having me. Y'all keep doing what you're doing, and let me know if there's anything I can do on my end to keep this conversation going. You know, I think the imperfect ally.
Just have the conversation, brother. You know,
yeah, let's keep it rolling, and y'all keep rocking. So
keep learning, keep unlearning. That's what I tell people every day. Learn, unlearn, have the hard conversations, keep pushing, and don't give up, man, because I think you're worth it. I think people that I don't know that are in your circles are worth it. I think we're all worth it. And if the exact minute we give up on that, I think we're doomed. But that doesn't mean, you know, meeting hate in the middle. Yeah. It means fighting for all of us that just want to continue on another day. And I think that's the point of these conversations. And I appreciate you so much, man. So thank you for coming on the Rattle Cruise, brother. And you have a great rest of your weekend, okay?
Y'all take it easy. See ya.
All right, brother.
All right. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Reynolds.